Hey everyone, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 5. And today is we're talking all about love. Today is nothing but love. Love the band, love the act, love the concept. It's all about love. They are, of course, the in some circles legendary, in other circles wholly unknown band from Los Angeles that started in the mid-60s, and I think are one of the greatest, most important, most genius bands that has ever existed. And so it is going to be a love fest today. So everything with love comes back to one man. He is the leader and more than leader, figurehead and shaman of the group, and that is the one and only Arthur Lee. He's a shaman of the group in the same way that Jim Morrison was for the Doors, Perry Farrell was for Jane's Addiction, or is for Jane's Addiction. You could say Brian Wilson is for the Beach Boys. You could maybe make the argument that John Lennon was for the Beatles. He is love incarnate. An absolutely fascinating figure. What love is and what the theme, the band, what the theme of this episode is going to be is what I feel, and recently doing a re-listen, but I had kind of always thought this, but the re-listen just sort of clarified things. This is where the sky meets the earth. It is where the ethereal meets the ground, meets reality. And that is love. That is Arthur Lee. It is the sky and the land touching to form the horizon. And so Arthur Lee, and it would have been impossible without him and without his visionary creativity and just, I guess, genius instincts. So he was born in Memphis, moved to LA when he was 5. Kind of Sly Stone-esque in that he was kind of in and around the music world, and the band was originally formed as the Grassroots. And themes, as we continue to do more episodes of Rich Talks Records, themes emerge. And here's a fun fact, not fun really, one of the original members of this prototypical version of Love was, you guessed it, none other than future Manson family member Bobby Beausoleil, Cupid himself, and future of performing the Lucifer soundtrack, Lucifer Rising soundtrack. That Bobby Beausoleil, yes, one of the most notorious human beings that's ever lived. But he was long gone by the time they did any recording. By the time they were Love, and this is the main lineup. You have Arthur Lee, of course, on vocals and guitar. You have Johnny Echols on guitar, and Bryan MacLean on guitar and vocals. So you have a 3-guitar lineup, much like the Buffalo Springfield, I would imagine, took inspiration from. You have the ridiculously talented Ken Forsey on bass, and by the time they were recording, Albin Snoopy Fisterer on drums. Their original drummer was Don Conca, and there was also an original bass player whose name I'm forgetting, I apologize. But Don Conca comes up later, so that's why I mention him. And so they were a very popular, they became a very, very popular club band in LA. And they became Elektra Records' first sort of real rock and roll band. They wanted to, Jack Holtzman wanted to get in, because Elektra had primarily been a folk label, and they wanted to get in, they wanted to get into rock and roll. And so Love was their voyage into that world, which eventually led to the signing of the Doors on Arthur Lee's suggestion, because he was a big fan. And they got on. And there is a pretty big influence of Love on the Doors. And on, not just in their overall sound, but certainly Jim Morrison always gave credit to Love. So their development is interesting because they did not arrive fully formed. And so each album shows tremendous artistic growth. But what's interesting is Arthur was, like I said, kind of like Sly Stone, sort of a man about town. He has an early soul song that he wrote for, I believe, Rosalie Brooks. It's called My Diary. And it features, so this would have been late 65, features none other than Jimi Hendrix. So not only was Arthur Lee a big influence on the Doors, Arthur Lee was a big influence on Jimi Hendrix, and certainly on his vocal style. You could say that in the same way that, when you listen to, like, Arthur Alexander, you can totally hear, like, where John Lennon got some of that stuff from. You can totally hear where Hendrix got it from with Arthur Lee. So the big band in LA was, of course, the Byrds, who I was originally going to do a video about, but after having done 7 goddamn hours about Black Flag, I did not want to do another multi-parter. And when I do the Byrds, which I eventually will because I love that band, I'm going to get into some really, like, weird shit with that band. Like, I'm going to go down some avenues with them, with records that didn't, solo project records and all sorts of obscurities with them. And I really want to dive deep, and that's going to be a multi-parter. And I didn't want to spend, like, the next 2 months of my life in Bird. I started getting ready for that, but I don't want to totally just go into Bird world for, forevermore for a while. So, but Arthur Lee was hugely influenced by the Byrds. And that became kind of sort of his blues background and R&B background became really fused with what the Byrds were doing. And Bryan MacLean had been a former roadie for the Byrds and was a songwriter, obviously, and instrumentalist in his own right. And so he brought some of the Byrds fan base over with him. And one of the things that's really interesting about Love is they're one of the very first bands, the MC5 are kind of another one, where it's almost like they're applying what's known as the folk process to rock and roll. They were a rock and roll band about rock and roll and had ideas about rock and roll and were treating it in kind of an auteur way that a lot of American groups hadn't really fully gotten into yet. So that's one of the things that I think is really fascinating about them as well. And we will get into that. So, recorded, the majority of the first album was recorded in 3 days in January of 1966. And they come out with this album, the self-titled debut, Love. I got nothing fancy by this band. This is just a straight fucking 80s reissue of the first album. I mean, look at this. This is like Elektra Records. Like, if you bought, if you, like me, were a Motley Crue fan back in the old days, like, this is what all the CDs look like. So this is there have been, like, much nicer pressings of this and a mono version. I don't have any of those. I just, I really just enjoy this. This album, I will say, I came in, like most people, with the third album, Forever Changes, worked my way backwards. Initially, I was really disappointed with this record. I didn't think it was that great. And it was, I don't know, it was probably about a year or two before I really, this album really clicked with me. And it was one of those things where I was, it was a slow drive in winter at dusk, and it just sort of forced me to listen. I had a similar experience with Trot Mask Replica. It was like I was like forced to listen to it in a way that part of my brain was trying not to skid off the road, and the rest of my brain was like somehow subconsciously absorbing the music, and it just made sense to me all of a sudden. So anyway, yeah, recorded 3 days, primarily in January of 1966. Love. Starts off with the epical first single, the Burt Bacharach, R.I.P. Burt Bacharach and Hal David song, My Little Red Book, which Arthur Lee had heard in the film What's New Pussycat, and adapted it. This is a fascinating arrangement and performance of this song. It is itchy and fidgety and jittery and tense, and there is no resolution. It is just, so what is ostensibly a love-lost boy-girl, please come back to me lament, takes on this, just agitated, dark, angry edge that is fascinating. And the band plays beautifully, and truly they all play as one. And, sort of the mental picture is, the band in the background with no lights on them, and then Arthur, at the forefront with one bright white light shining down starkly upon him at center stage. And that is the mental image that you get with this, and the pleading and the pain. It's visceral, and it's really, really amazing. And then we go into the second song, and that is Can't Explain. And this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit. Can't Explain. Oh, by the way, pretty much all of this is written by Arthur Lee. I will note exceptions. And actually, I'm just going to take a really quick scan of the credits because I'm pretty sure that's okay. There's a couple co-writes later on side two. Okay. So pretty much it's Arthur Lee's writing, unless otherwise noted. Can't Explain is interesting because you obviously have the title liberated from The Who. You have Rolling Stones lyrics, kind of a smattering of lyric cribs from the song What a Shame. And musically, the song is something of an inside-out version of the Byrds' I'll Feel a Whole Lot Better. That particular masterpiece. Funny, there's troubled visionary Arthur Lee inside out's a version of a song by troubled visionary Gene Clark. So, troubled visionary recognizing fellow troubled visionary. If the Byrds in this situation are the Beatles, this is the Rolling Stones. Because the thing about this album is its earthiness. There is an earthy, I don't want to say muddy, but kind of muddy, but earthy. I will go with earthy quality. It kind of sounds like Early Animals or Yardbirds, or it sounds almost like Chess Records. It's very live band on the floor of the studio. You really get a sense of them playing as one. And so Can't Explain is both very rock and roll and powerful and driven and primal. However, you've got beautiful harmonies, and you've got absolutely gorgeous, stunning, chiming Johnny Echols, very Birds guitar over the top of all of that. And but then, you know, again, where the sky meets the earth, you've got Arthur's, you know, occasional emotional directness of you wake up in the morning and find yourself dead, which is, he can be very direct, but he can also be extremely slippery. And he can be slippery in a way that Syd Barrett is slippery. So there's disarming directness and then disarming slipperiness to him. The next song is, speaking of slippery, a song, kind of a lover's lament ballad. It's very, very pretty, has a lovely harmonica hook. A Message to Pretty, which is a nickname that he had for an ex-girlfriend. And it's a beautiful ballad, but again, there's this, it's slippery. There's a weird emotional coldness to it. And it's on one hand vulnerable, but then sliding into coldness. And again, you look at these guys, you look at, like, on one hand they're hippies, and on one hand they're called love, and on the other hand they're kind of hard motherfuckers. And especially this guy right here, that's Arthur, in the leather jacket. Look at this guy. Like, hippie, but watch yourself. Like, maybe not that much of a hippie. So, and that's kind of, I feel like, what Message to Pretty personifies. For now, we are going to skip the next song, My Flash on You. I'll get to that when we talk about side 2. And then we come to Softly to Me, which is the first Bryan MacLean song. Now, Bryan is often considered the stark polar opposite of Arthur Lee, because his songs are shockingly sugary sweet when you hear them. It's frosting and sprinkles and whipped cream, you know, all on top of each other. And, you know, the band has, you know, like Johnny Echols said some sort of tatty things about the fluffiness of some of his music, but I think that kind of gives the short shrift to Bryan MacLean. The way that I would describe him is, it's funny because in a way he plays the McCartney role in the band, but really he's kind of like, if the way that I would describe him is if Richie Furay was fucking awesome, as opposed to, sorry, fans of him, but imagine if was amazing. That's Bryan MacLean. Soft guy, you know, and you know, soft guy with soft sentiments, and gentle, maybe not soft, but gentle, and beautiful, like truly beautiful. And he uses the word elegant in this song, and there's an elegance to his writing. And you know, there's I would have to imagine it's Arthur adding, there's a sort of a dissonant beginning to the song, and then it kind of kicks into something that in a different band's hands with different production would have been something by the association. This super, again, sugary sweet confection. But I don't know if this is because of the way the band plays it, but there's something in Bryan MacLean's voice that there is a darkness, a shading, a melancholia that is this. Arthur has the same thing, and I think that's where Bryan MacLean is such an integral part of the band, because I think emotionally him and Arthur are probably far more similar than they are different. It's just that Arthur has bravado and slipperiness, and I didn't say that, I said this, or I said this, but I meant that, and then every now and again coming at you with directness. Bryan, there's the same, but they have the same yearn for connection. and they have the same hard time being vulnerable and opening themselves up. And Arthur wants love. Arthur wants to be loved, but Bryan also wants to be loved. And there's a feeling of a need for acceptance. So don't be fooled by all the sugary cute stuff, because he's really fucking expressing his heart, and he's really handing you his heart with an open hand on this song. So it's a disarmingly beautiful song, and you have to listen to the layer behind the layer. You know, you have to get to the food underneath the frosting and the whipped cream, because it's there, and it's very serious. So it's not, it's, in that sense, it's the opposite of something like The Association, where it's just fluffy and nice. This is fluffy and nice to get to emotional reality. It's not pretty, it's beautiful. It's about fucking love. Real love. That's what it's about. Then we get to Arthur has a sort of a mid-tempo ballad, No Matter What You Do. Beautiful, beautiful anthemic chorus. Gorgeous song, gorgeous harmonies. It builds, and it's as emotionally real. And, when he calls out to Johnny to take the solo. Johnny, the competition on this record between Johnny and Ken Forsey for who's kind of the quiet MVP of the record, because Forsey's bass is beautiful and he's doing all sorts of wonderful things on the bass. And then you've got Johnny Echols, who plays his guitar like, I don't know, it's like a valley-wide electric auto harp, or some sort of like ultimate 18-string tambourine, not tambourine, banjo. It's like the world's ultimate electrified banjo sound. It's fucking gorgeous. And Arthur's calling out to Johnny to take the solo is as wonderful and inspiring as Iggy fucking calling out to Ron to take the solo on No Fun. And Johnny takes two solos, and they are furiously strummed all chord solos that are equally as awesome, maybe probably better, honestly, than the wonderful all chord solo that Carlos Alomar took on Look Back in Anger by Bowie. Amazing. And when Arthur calls out to him, you can hear the fucking rest of the band swell with pride at the fucking beauty they're creating. And he is playing the band as if it's one giant instrument. He's playing the band with his spirit. He is playing them, and they are coming through him, and he is the fucking shaman. And it all comes together on moments like this on this beautiful album. And then side one ends, they bring it down. They bring it down with a beautiful, creepy, sometimes beautiful, sometimes off-putting, sort of proto-White Rabbit instrumental called Emotions, and like martial drumming, and it's almost The Shadows. And it's just a really cool way to end. After bringing you up, after raising your spirits so much, they bring you back down, and it brings you back into dusk and into the shadows after having gone up into the clouds and into heaven. And that is the end of side one of this beautiful album. So we move on to side two of this album. The first song is another beautiful first album, Birds-esque song, You'll Be Following. That references, calls out both Johnny Echols and Don Conca by name. It is a surprisingly frank, for lack of a better way of putting it, drug song. It's beautiful, but obviously there is a darkness to it, and the contrast is, again, they're amazing at it, and they're amazing at it this early on. And then we go from that into Gazing, Another song, by the way, where Arthur calls out Johnny Echols to take the solo, and it's just as glorious a moment. But Gazing is one of my absolute favorite songs on this record, and as much as Love improved on the next couple records, and as much as I said they weren't fully formed, this song shows what a fucking unbelievable visionary talent Arthur Lee was. This is Bible level writing. This is if William Blake was rhapsodizing about Andy Warhol stuff, or if William Blake was rhapsodizing writing verse about Jasper Johns, that's what this is. It's spiritual, it's ethereal, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's kind of unlike any other songwriter on the planet. I don't know who would even conceive of a song like Gazing. It's spectacular. And now we get to the Hey Joe saga. So there is a channel, Pop Culture Graveyard, shout out to Pop Culture Graveyard, that did an amazing video about Love a year or two ago. I've been trying not to just openly plagiarize from that video because he did a really good job. But I feel like he does a good job of laying out the Hey Joe saga. But, a lot of bands covered Hey Joe. Jimi Hendrix had the biggest hit with it. David Crosby always said that he was the one who discovered the song, blah, blah, blah. So Bryan MacLean, Hey Joe had obviously been part of the Byrds repertoire. Bryan MacLean brought it over with him, and it was Bryan MacLean's version that became kind of the showstopper for Love. And, cute, nice, please like me, pretty girl. Yeah. He can fucking sing rock and roll, and he can sing dangerous rock and roll with the best of them. Bryan MacLean, huge talent in his own right. And he sounds fucking great on Hey Joe, and the band plays amazingly, and Forsey is doing all sorts of beautiful counterpoint bassline stuff. Incredible. And all the guitars meshing and churning away. But I had skipped a song on side one, My Flash on You. So, you could argue that Bryan MacLean heisted this from the Byrds. It's obviously Love's own arrangement of it. And one could come to the conclusion that Arthur was jealous of the response that Bryan would get when he would sing Hey Joe on stage. And so My Flash on You is Arthur taking their arrangement of Hey Joe and writing his own lyrics over it. And then making it, what is it, number 3 or 4? Number 4 on the track sequence. So putting it ahead of Hey Joe. So it's what you have on this album is 2 songs in one, and all of the weird psychological dynamics at play with that. But Arthur is, a phenomenal singer. So, his voice, he can sing in that kind of R&B soul shouter way, and then obviously like Gazing and You'll Be Following, he can do beautiful falsetto harmony stuff. He's just an amazing singer with all sorts of range. So, but him just singing straight rock and roll like he does on My Flash on You, he's like one of the best in the world. He's awesome, and the lyrics are like some ultimate rock and roll shit. So the lyrics that he writes for this are, people talk about, the way I look, I say, go on, come on and say it, I got enough to write a book. Beautiful. Like, all I want to say to the world is that I'm a man that's free. Fucking right on. I'm at 1966. I haven't even talked about the fact that they're a fucking integrated, the first pre-Sly Stone, first integrated rock and roll band. So think about that. I mean, like going around the world looking like that, 1966, this group of guys, Okay? You get the idea. Think about what the world was like in 1966. Is that the year that fucking Watts happened? Yeah. So this is happening, hop, skip, and a jump from fucking Watts riots, okay? So, or that was just a couple months later. You get the fucking idea. So, like, that kind of assertion, that kind of like real expression that takes guts and soul power in the truest sense, okay? And also, it takes fucking love of humanity to fucking express that real, all right? Then we get Signed DC, DC being Don Conca. This song, again, pre-Velvet Underground's Heroin. It's a very unflinching, very frank song about drug addiction. It's written it's written beautifully. It's written as a letter, as a suicide note perhaps, and again signed DC is the spoiler how the song ends. Beautiful song. Beautifully straight ahead and straightforward in a way that Arthur normally wasn't, both compositionally and lyrically. There's no slipperiness here. This is just, without being melodramatic, it's just kind of man with the golden arm stuff. It's really, really impressive. It's a really impressive performance, and then just as a song, and the fact that he was already this level of a songwriter. Colored Balls Falling, another, like You'll Be Following, another beautiful Birds-esque rock and roll song, gorgeous. And then Mushroom Clouds is an anti-war song. It is slightly mawkish. However, I think that, and this is not just with love, but I think with great art that strives for beauty and not prettiness, it can take the hit for its more excessive moments because of the depth of what it's expressing, and it's better that they take the risk than not take the risk, because taking the risk results in all of these other incredible moments. I don't at all think that it is. I don't mean to paint it at all as a failed experiment, because I think it is an amazing song, and I think their tremulous, earnest vocals are absolutely perfect, because again, it's real. These are real human concerns about real humanity. This is not about it's about love. It is not about prettiness. It is about beauty. And that is what this song expresses. And what this song expresses is a truly, though it goes to the ugliest and worst of humanity, through the power of their expression, they're able to make you see it in a way that incorporates beauty, and that is very difficult to do. So it is a great song, and like Sign DC, again, very, very impressive at this point. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'm gonna check a release date of something. Yeah. So this actually predates the release of the third Birds album, which is the one that has Hey Joe, their version of Hey Joe on it, but also their sort of mawkish anti-war, anti-nuclear war song, I Come and Stand at Every Door, which of course was not written by them. But it's interesting that the Byrds, who, were the primary influence, also had, on their very next record, had a song that is remarkably similar thematically and presented in a very similar, overly earnest kind of fashion. So was love influencing the Byrds? Very well could be. And then everything wraps up with an absolutely gorgeous love song by Arthur called And More. It incorporates, like, I don't know, like nursery rhymes. It is like, I love the fact that he's willing to do all of that. I love the fact, oh, and Bryan has a co-write on it, so maybe some of that stuff is coming from Bryan. But in Arthur's hands, it feels, again, sort of playful and slippery, but again, there still is an earnestness and an emotional reality to it, and it's just as just again melodically as a song. It's just, if you put this on a compilation, or if you put this on a I don't know, a playlist now. I guess people don't make mixtapes or mix CDs. I'm a man out of time. It would be a standout. It's just a great song, and it's just a really cool way to end the record, because it sort of has all of the different tangled emotional strands of the band in one place, and the fact that it is in fact a co-write between Bryan and Arthur. Perfect. So that is the first album by Love. It's an amazing album. It's an influential album. Again, the ethereal and the earthy coming together to form the horizon, and here's the thing: it only gets better from here. So, June 1966, Arthur takes the band into the studio. So, My Little Red Book had been an unexpected hit single, and one thing I didn't mention, again, talking about, like, when I was talking about Black Flag, like, these are very young people. Arthur was 21 at this point. So, these are young people making music for the youth of America. And it just so happens that these are preternaturally talented and driven, creative, brilliant people who then marked a time that exists for all and expressive of and for all time. But the band did little to promote, and they were accusing Elektra of not knowing how to promote them and not knowing what to do with them. But on the other hand, Arthur wouldn't tour, and was, like Syd Barrett, highly resistant to, he had an allergic reaction to touring. So, like Syd Barrett or Harry Nilsson, Arthur just wasn't going to travel around the country, and certainly wasn't going to go on some sort of package tour. And again, kind of like what I had said about the MC5 in that sense, and I would say Syd Barrett, early Pink Floyd, the idea that they kind of saw that as beneath them, that they were artists and they weren't the association. They weren't just going to go and smile and say and play their 20 minutes and go, "Hey guys, great to be here," So that wasn't their vibe, and that's not what they were fucking doing. So Johnny Echols has expressed claims of racism as to why they didn't make it bigger, and certainly there's got to be something to that. They were an interracial group in 1966. So, needless to say, there's racial issues there. But I don't know that they helped their cause by being sort of as artistically temperamental as they were, refusing to tour. And, the Doors, as erratic as Jim Morrison was, the Doors, especially the other members, showed up and shook hands and did press, and, So, and I think the other members of Pink Floyd were willing to do that. So, when Syd left, that was that. So anyway, but Arthur, June 66, creative visionary, takes the band into the studio. He has written a new song called 7 and 7 Is. Jack Holtzman himself is producing it. This is going to be the one. This is going to be the hit that catapults them beyond the level of what had been a sizable hit, but maybe not the mass commercial breakthrough of My Little Red Book. Seven and Seven Is might have been intended as a commercial triumph. It was not. It was, however, an absolute resounding artistic triumph. They became a completely different band for this one and only song. It's also the recording of it. The endlessly propulsive, endless, intense drum roll, rhythmic pattern of it, blistered and bloodied poor Snoopy's hands and drove him out of the drum chair. This was his final appearance as the drummer for Love. Arthur's intense artistic vision and adherence to that pushes the band into the recording of this unbelievable, unprecedented song. It is, people have said it's proto-punk, it's proto-heavy metal, it's proto-thrash, whatever. It's, the thing is, though, a lot of bands have covered it. One of the only ones that I've ever liked was Alice Cooper, who did kind of a self-consciously deconstructed, new wavy version of it, a deconstructed new wave version of it. And I think Alice was the most successful. But this song is kind of impossible to cover. In a way, it's kind of doomed to its own legacy in the same way that, like, when anybody covers All Along the Watchtower, they're doing it as a tribute to Jimmy, man. So it's just an excuse for all sorts of embarrassing and dopey guitar histrionics that you've heard 10,000 times. And I've heard a lot of people cover the song and they just turn it into a thrasher and ignore everything else about it. The breaks after the verses where it goes into those bass runs that Forsey is doing, it sounds fucking symphonic. It sounds celestial. So it brings you up briefly into the heavens. And it sounds like he's playing the fucking bass guitar of fucking God, or the bass guitar of the universe, before it brings you back into the endless churning. And kudos to Johnny Echols and Bryan and Arthur for that endless mesh of churning guitars. And then you've got Arthur, who writes these unbelievable modernist poetry lyrics that are one part self-assertion, another part political and spiritual commentary, and another part self-immolation and self-gratification or self-assertion via potential self-immolation. It's a fascinating piece of plugging straight into the subconscious and not even trying to connect the images, leaving that purely in the mind of the listener to do. It's his vocal is, it's for all time. It is one of the greatest rock and roll vocals ever. I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is how rock and roll should sound. This is how rock and roll should be sung. This is how it should be approached. This is what happens when rock and roll is treated as the art form that it actually fucking is. I mean, what can you say? And then the whole thing, as it only can, again, visionary, brilliant record making, musical thinking, using the studio as an instrument. This is, again, 1966. Not a lot of people have gotten to this point yet. And it ends with this fucking big explosion. It builds and builds and builds. There's the brief little guitar flourish, and then kabam, the explosion and the fallout, the dark blue rain of the fallout that it immediately goes into is kind of a warped version of like Santo and Johnny's Sleepwalk. But there's sort of a creaking, lurching, but it's disquietingly calm. It's a masterpiece. Like, who's thinking like this in 1966? Not many people, I'll tell you that. Brilliant. So that's 7 and 7 is, and it leads the way to Love's next incredible artistic triumph, which we will get to right now. So also I should just mention that 7 and 7 is, and the B-side is a really, really cool weird sort of riff on a folk song called Number 14. It's really strangely produced. It's almost proto post punk. It's a really odd B-side, and but it's also really, really cool and well worth hearing. And so I should also just throw that in. In November of 1966, Love released their second album, Capo. And again, this is just what I've had for umpteen bajillion years. It is CD remaster. I love this album cover. Look at these guys. Jesus Christ. Look at these guys. I mean, my God. Amazing. Like, again, and look at this picture. Well, I think that this is from maybe a later photo session, but like, come on. You think this is it? You think these guys aren't going to rock your world? Come on. So it's the Doors production team. Paul Rothchild and Bruce Botnick. And before the Doors' first album, this is the Doors sound. Not only is it the Doors sound, it's like the Doors sound of like Strange Days and some of Waiting for the Sun and some of Soft Parade. Like the Doors were very influenced, but I think having the same producers was clearly a big part of that. But the first time I ever listened to this record, which was the first Love album? I don't know. I was taken with how Doors it is. The Doors fronted by Syd Barrett writing the songs as sung by Sly Stone. Some sort of like ultimate dream combination. This album is a controversial album, and I am only going to be more controversial. And as I'm sure I blew all sorts of credibility by defending Family Man by Black Flag, I will be defending aspects of this record that nobody defends. I dare say I might even be the first, but I'm willing to take that risk. After the 7 and 7 Is recording sessions, they moved Snoopy. They didn't want to fire Arthur Lee. Really liked Snoopy, so they moved him over to piano and harpsichord, which features prominently on this masterpiece. And then they got a new drummer, Michael Stewart, and I'm gonna butcher this, TJ Cantrelli on saxophone and flute. My apologies for butchering your name. But saxophone and flute, really important. Harpsichord, really important. These are not random or insignificant changes / additions to the band. These now become crucial elements of the sound. Capo, the album title. The musical terminology for starting over. And as Johnny Echols wisely noted, that the first album was largely written for dancing when they were performing at clubs, and this was more to sit and listen to at home. This is, let's just get into the songs. So as we had more again on the end of the first album, we have the band dynamics playing out between Arthur and Bryan in the opening love songs that are both written about the same woman. They were dating the same woman, the titular Stephanie. So Stephanie Knows Who is the first song, and automatically, and again, as many have noted, it sounds like a completely different band. Part of it is the lineup changes. Part of it is the production. The production is unbelievable. It is cinematic. It is wide, beautiful vistas. The earthiness of the first album is gone. The Four Seas bass sound is clear and clean and present, and sounds almost like 1970s jazz fusion kind of bass sounds. Not that he's playing jazz fusion stuff, but it has that same level of bassiness and presence to it. And as I had noted, the moments of confidence on the first album, this entire fucking thing is confident. Again, it's pop art. It's, you know, bold, stark whites, and then even bolder, starker splashes of bright, vivid colors. And this is, you know, pop art in sound. This could be, especially this first album side, could be the soundtrack if if Stanley Kubrick had made like 2 or 3 more movies in the late 60s, and maybe made a movie like Jesus, why am I doing that? If Stanley Kubrick had like directed The Graduate and he had set it in the future, like this would be the soundtrack for it. And you can picture like the white half circle chairs and like this the sort of futuristic super minimalist, hyper white, bright contrast furniture of the room as this music floats through it. So Stephanie Knows Who, again, it's the Doors. It opens with harpsichord. This is one of the most harpsichord heavy records ever made. The saxophone is unobtrusive but perfect, and Arthur is singing in beautiful, amazing soul shouter fashion, and you know, his lyrics have gone up another whole level. Everything, you know, as great as the first album is, this is that first album times 100. They've gone from here to here, right? And that might be out of frame. It's going to get even more out of frame by the next record, you know, foreshadowing. But the lyrics are gorgeous, and again, there's a hell of a lot of emotional reality, but Arthur and he's not just tonally slippery anymore, he's now elliptical. He's elliptical and slippery and free-floating, and the only person I can really compare him to is Syd Barrett, because this becomes that in an instant. It's all quicksilver and very fast-moving, and you have to really be on its wavelength. But his singing is absolutely phenomenal, and to apply that to his weird, slippery, elliptical, poetic lyrics, beautiful. And the weird little rhythmic breaks that the band comes to, it's not jarring when they do stop start, or because a lot of this whole album side 4/4 is fucking out the window. Rock music, kind of as you know it, out the fucking window. This is they're kind of just pioneering their own genre. The only band that I think dared to pick up on it was the Doors. The Doors already were the Doors, but like they're kind of the only other band on this wavelength, you know. So there's just sort of their own genre here, and it's fluid. So the stop starts and the weird tempos, and then the weird tempo shifts within the weird tempos. All of it, it's not herky jerky. It's not angular. There's nothing angular about them. They are fluid. You are sailing in fucking beautiful, pristine water as you watch. So if the first album and the overall ethos is land, you know, sky meets land, this is sky meets water, and there are no clouds on the horizon. And there's nothing, maybe there's some mountains in the distance, and maybe some seagulls. And that's what this is. That's what this album is. It's the sound of youth. It's the sound of clear sailing, and no storms ahead. And you're going, you know you're going to get where you're going. That's what this album is. You know that you will get where you are going, where you watch the sky meet the water, and that's all that you can see in front of you. Stephanie Knows Who. It's gorgeous. Then we move into Bryan's song, love song also for the titular Stephanie, Orange Skies. I didn't know for a long time that Bryan wrote this. It's the only song he doesn't sing. Arthur, talk about slippery. He was the soul shouter. Now, beautiful falsetto, completely laid back. The flute is Cantrelli's flute. I don't want to keep butchering the first name. Is rolling and urging the band forward, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Bryan's lyrics are imagistic and beautiful, and but when it gets to the laughing, glad, and full of glee, like, it's again grounded in emotional reality. And with Arthur singing it, it's with Arthur being ethereal, somehow he brings a level of emotional reality. So there's all the push and pull, and the full range of feelings of falling in love and being in love and wanting love and pretty sure that you're getting it from this person, and just being enamored, being smitten, being in a state of adoration. That's what the sound. That's what this is, right? So you're in love with nature, you're in love with this person, you're in love with the moment, you're in love with life itself. Fucking Da Capo, baby! Anyway, then we move to my personal favorite song on the whole goddamn thing, Que Vida. Jesus, Arthur's lyrics, again, what the fuck? This song somehow incorporates, like, anti-war sentiment, political commentary, transcendental statements, states of being, statements about being itself. It's all somehow still a love song. The drums are, Michael Stewart's drums are these beautiful rolling and tumbling fills that are elegant. And again, it's not stop-starty. It's all just flowing and elegant and gorgeous and perfect. And you hear, and there are these little breaks where the guitar and the organ are soaring with each other, and it's just deliriously beautiful. And you hear this and you think, there are certain bands that didn't make a lot of albums, like, let's say Public Image Limited or something, where you listen to them and you're like, how the hell did these motherfuckers not make 8 or 9 albums? Like, how is there just like one record that sounds like this? And that's how this is. You're shocked that there's only one of these, because this suggests 2 or 3 albums worth of material, in the same way that, like, the Doors' first album logically leads to Strange Days, right? So you hear Strange Days, and yes, it's a development and it's more studio-fied, but it's this logical growth. This is it. This is how they sound. They never sound like this again. They could have gotten 2, 3, 4 records out of this, because that's what it suggests. And because these songs are so relatively short, they just keep you coming back for more, because you want to be in this world. You want to be in that headspace. You want to see those sights. You want to feel those feelings. And you want to hear the fucking music of this genre that comes and goes, and then that's it. And then, in Que Vida, I've listened to this song so many times, just like in awe of its beauty and in awe of how much it expresses with so few words, and just being such a very, like, relatively short song. It contains a world within it, and then and it ends with, like, the ringing of sleigh bells or prayer bells, and that's like the perfect end. So you have this sort of unbelievably elegant, perfect, flowing 3-song suite that begins this album side of music, and then it goes into 7 and 7 is. 7 and 7 is a perfect, after the opening flourish of the first 3 songs. It's kind of even though I talked about it in the context of it being a single, it does work as a bridge between the 2 halves of the first side, because then we go into moodier areas, and the next song is The Castle, and again, this is now far more sparse, elegant, delicate, and it's like the musical equivalent of looking at, like, an illuminated manuscript, or a tapestry. It's very delicate, colorful, but it makes you feel almost, there's something solemn about it. And The castle is just absolutely gorgeous. When it is Ken Forsey's masterpiece on an album that he shines beautifully across. His bass breakdown about a minute 10 in is incredibly emotionally resonant, and it sort of gently glides the song to a stop, and then the guitar picks it up. And if I was using the kind of the sailing analogy before, this is the skies are dark. It's not nighttime, but the skies are dark, and a lot of clouds. Maybe there's been some bad weather, and so you have the bass, the solitary bass breakdown. The acoustic guitar starts to pick it back up, and then Snoopy on the harpsichord. The harpsichord coming through is the sun breaking through, and this is just cinematic. Again, it's vast, and it's also still very, very delicate. And it is the sound of just these people all in one headspace, truly thinking and playing as one, and with absolute care, absolute love for the sound that they are making. So there were the swells of Pride on the first record, and now they're able to take that and push it into all sorts of other emotional areas. And again, you're hearing this and you're thinking, how did they not make more albums like this? How did they not turn this, and the drumming slightly speeds up because they're all just sort of playing as one, and then it goes into kind of like the final flourish of the ending. It is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous piece of music and gorgeous piece of ensemble playing. And then that leads into she comes in colors, and again she comes in colors. Rolling Stones might be using something that sounds like that pretty soon. And this is where the flute and the harpsichord duet with each other throughout. It is the most emotionally open and expressive vocal. The lyrics are absolutely gorgeous. It ties together sort of the darkness of the castle with the opening beauty. The shadow and the light are now one, and it is just an absolutely stunning. It's maybe the best song here. I don't know. I mean, Que Vida is so close to my heart, and then you have Seven and Seven Is. But this is just an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous song. Arthur sings it beautifully. It's in the higher part of his range. And again, this is just free flowing. So when the harpsichord flute duet comes in, it's one of the, again, graceful, elegant, beautiful, just perfect. And I talk about Arthur's slippery lyrics. And what do I mean by slippery? Perfect example. You saw right through me, you said. Was I out of sight? You saw right through me, you said. Was I out of sight? And then in the third verse, I looked for you everywhere till I'm not around. It's fucking perfect. It's simple. And you understand what he's expressing, but you can think about that. You can think about that all day. When you're in line somewhere, right? Living through the boredom and the drudgery of life, is standing in some goddamn bullshit, ugly glass rectangle somewhere, right? This is the stuff that you can think about. These are the sights that you can see that can take you out of that and make life worth living, right? It gives you something to think about. It gives you something for your soul and psyche and spirit and mind. Beautiful, beautiful. Just truly the sounds of love. No pun intended. And I know I'm going to that well a lot, but You listen and you tell me if I'm wrong, right? So then we flip the record over and get to side 2. You flip the record over and you can't help but notice something, that there is only one song. There is but only one song on side 2. And that one song has the intriguing title of Revelation. Now, many people have said that the first side of this album could have been one of the greatest EPs, if not the greatest EP ever recorded. And I, for all too long, fell into that poisoned mentality. Until one day I was working on, I was doing some writing, and I had this album on in the background, and I truly locked in with the 19-minute expanse of Revelation, and all of a sudden it made sense, and it became wide open, and it became clear that it in fact was a revelation. So, the people who say that the side 1 is perfect and forget about side 2, as Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet would say, fuck that shit! I will defend it. Revelation, here we go. So, the band themselves shit-talked it. Arthur Lee said it was the worst fucking song he'd ever recorded. I kind of have a feeling that is because that, kind of in the same way that Brian Wilson for decades said that Smile was inappropriate music for the Beach Boys, I get the sense that it was probably because they were so fucking browbeaten about it. First of all, here's the thing, okay? With a band making something as orchestrated and gorgeous as the first record, and everybody gaga about the third record, and Revelation getting written off as this indulgence, here's what I say. Right now, in 2023, we need, the same way that I defend Family Man, I'll defend Johnny Yoko's stuff eventually, some of Zappa's stuff, whatever, right? In 2023, we need this stuff now more than ever, because on a daily fucking basis, you are insulted and treated like a stupid asshole every fucking minute of your life, right? And the interchangeable Pop-Tarts that they parade in front of you, who are all congratulated for saying the same fucking shit in the same fucking way every fucking time. Don't you get sick of that? Don't you feel constantly fucking insulted and treated like a stupid asshole? Don't you get tired of that? Because you're not stupid and you're not an asshole, right? So, what is beautiful about art and what is beautiful about fucking Revelation is it does not insult you, not for a second. It says, hey, we had a good time, right? Let's have an even better time. Let's go. And that is what fucking art should do. That is what artists should do, as opposed to being artists whose sole function is to be congratulated for having become billionaires. So, Revelation. Beautiful. And Arthur says that they had a big fight that day that they recorded. It was recorded all in one big take. You know what? Maybe they did. And maybe they have bad memories around the recording of it and whatever. And literally every review ever shit-talking it and saying what a horrible mistake it was. Absolutely not. Because here's the thing. In the same way that it sounds confident, this is confident. This is... So they were one band on the first album. They became another band for the space of a single on 7 and 7 Is, and then they become another band on side 1. They're now yet another band on side 2. They're fucking moving at the speed of light, as artists are supposed to do, right? Especially when you are young and vibrant and free, as artists are supposed to be in society, right? So, it begins with Snoopy on the fucking harpsichord, and then it goes off, and it starts off kind of a riff on the Rolling Stones Going Home. And, you know, it's cool, and Arthur's kind of doing a lot of kind of R&B-ish stuff. And then it starts to shapeshift, and there's a really great harmonica solo that he does, and then he goes off into the screaming. Echols does some amazing weirdo guitar stuff that is prefiguring post-punk. Forsey does incredible bass work as the musical voyage goes along, right? But then things really burst open with fucking Cantrelli's saxophone, because that is where we're not out on the sea anymore. We're not contemplating existential quandaries anymore. We're now just like driving through the middle of the city on like an overcast day, and somehow the streets are dense with people and activity, and yet you're just flying through. You're somehow able to drive 50, 60 miles an hour through the center of a city, and it's all again, modern and vibrant and fucking happening, and they have just dropped you into the middle of this place. And the subtle rhythmic shifting that Michael Stewart does when the sax starts, and the sax just kind of goes all over the place. And, you're now in the realm of like, they're tying together jazz, they're tying together rock and roll and R&B. They're off on their own voyage, and they truly, again, they are all playing as one, and it's beautiful, and it's an exploration. And then, honestly, my favorite part of the whole goddamn thing is, you're kind of burning through these layers of the band, and you're burning through these layers of sort of like the different eras of rock and roll, and then you get to like the shift of the saxophone, the exploration with the saxophone, which is fucking beautiful. And then even that drops out, and then you are just left with Michael Stewart's drums, and you realize that Michael Stewart has been sort of carrying this entire album. It's all kind of been on his shoulders, and it's just alone, him in the studio, the drums, big, vibrant, confident, free, right? Big, wide open white spaces with bold, fearless splashes of primary colors, and you're just listening to him play these drums that are just vast and perfect sounding, and there's no need for effects, there's no need for manipulation, because it's just a man playing wild and open and free and in the most beautiful way. And especially if you're driving and listening to this, and you're not locked into that, and that's not with you, and you don't carry that feeling with you in your heart, maybe you need, I don't know, maybe you should play it again and try to think of it that way. I don't know, but and then it sort of ends with this like big hissing of what sounds like a backwards hi-hat, and then it sort of being like sucked backwards in time, and it ends with the harpsichord, right? And that is how the album ends. And I hear all of this and I go, fuck. That is amazing, and that's bold, and it takes guts and courage to pull that off, and they do pull it off. It's not a failed experiment at all. It's a huge compliment to side one. Side one gets you there, but this takes it even further. It's a thing of beauty. Side one is the voyage on water. Maybe this is the voyage into land, into the modern age. It's a thing of beauty, and it doesn't insult you. It doesn't insult you. It assumes that you could take the ride with it, right? And that's what art is about. It's about having the subjective experience. And beautiful, fully realized art. There's no failed experiments. It's the real thing. Fucking sounds of love. Truly. So, I might actually now make this a two-parter. Fuck it. We'll see. So if I use this as an outro, well, everyone, I hope that you've enjoyed this. We'll see you real soon with the part 2 of Love, where we will be covering the venerated forever changes, and the misunderstood gem that is love for sale. Oh yeah, one other. Like and subscribe and leave comments and all the usual YouTube stuff. And you know, there's some real cool people out there, and I appreciate you taking the ride with all of this. So it's fun to do. So all right, we'll see you real soon. Bye.